Hello, time for another vlog. Haven't done one for a while, but I thought I'd look at the news, really. So a topical one, if you like. Now, at the moment, it's the end of August 2021. So, the United States is pulling out of Afghanistan and making an absolute pig's ear out of it, really. It's a complete and utter shambles. They've had, 18 months to prepare, and it's all happening at the last minute. It's very strange. But I think one thing we need to think about is, why do the West go to war? I mean, they always tell us it's for a good cause, to prevent terrorism or something. But is it really? Maybe it is in some cases. The war in Afghanistan was supposedly about that. But I don't know how many people really believe that. I mean, our politicians are such incredible liars, Why do we really think? I think it's for profit, actually. When you look at which companies pay the American politicians, contribute to their campaigns, it's huge mega corporations, it's the military-industrial complex, companies like Lockheed Martin, Boeing, etc., Grumman, or whatever they're called, those huge companies whose names we kind of half know. They're the ones who are making huge, enormous profits out of things like this. Defence contractors, primarily, but also there's oil and so on. But if that's so, why quit Afghanistan? Now that's more of a puzzle. I think partly it is because it is becoming more and more unpopular at home, and they'll have to invent a new war somewhere, okay, to refresh it all. Kind of like Vietnam. It was started under false pretenses in the first place, with a fake Bay of Tonkin incident. And if we think our governments are any different from historical ones, I think we are sadly mistaken. They're not honest. So yeah, they've quit. One reason maybe they've quit, if you're a conspiracy theorist, is something that Biden said. He said that we need the troops at home. Well, that's ambiguous, of course, because it could be they want to bring the troops home because they've been abroad for too long and being killed for no real military purpose anymore, if there ever was such a thing. But also, maybe the troops are needed at home for some mission at home, because civil unrest is getting rather significant, especially in the United States. And with the Great Reset going on and civil liberties being curtailed everywhere, it may be that they need the extra troops at home. But I must say, it's very strange that the mess they've made of the pullout, given that there was plenty of time to prepare. Okay, Trump signed the deal, what was it, late last year? How long has Biden been in? Not very long. But it was known about long before then. And we don't really know what the terms of the deal are, because it's why quit, and why do it in this apparently shambolic way? Is it deliberate? First of all, did the intelligence advisors to Biden know that the Afghan army would lose more or less immediately? Well, they claim they didn't know that. No, we taught them, we set them up as an army, and they should have been able to defend Afghanistan. But everybody knows that they were just about holding on even with the American help. So I would say it was obvious that they would lose. Maybe not this quickly, but obvious that they would lose. So Afghanistan is therefore being deliberately handed to the Taliban, which is very interesting. And on top of that, the Taliban have been apparently deliberately handed some, how much was it? $85 billion worth of equipment, including about 100 fighter planes and helicopters, 10,000 guns, handguns that is, rifles and the like, artillery, Humvees, that's the American Jeeps, armoured cars and more. I mean, they've been fully equipped. Why? Not just incompetence, surely. Maybe this stuff was meant for the Afghan army, hey? Well, maybe it was, but since everybody knew the Afghan army was going to be beaten, that doesn't make much sense. It's being handed to the Taliban, I'm sure. I'm not quite sure why. Maybe they represent a buffer against China in the region. But China are not their enemy. On the contrary, China is probably going to be able to take advantage of the huge lithium reserves and cobalt reserves which are in Afghanistan, and which are needed for batteries and solar cells and the new energy infrastructure that we're going to need for climate change. Yeah, let's just hand it all over. It's strange. I mean, it's near Iran, it's near Pakistan. Neither of those countries are particularly friendly, especially Iran. I think Iran would be friendlier if they weren't harassed so much by the West, to be honest, but there you go. I don't understand why it's been handed over. Okay, they want to get out, so yes, maybe they've made a deal with the Taliban. Look, we'll give you all this kit under the table, we'll give you all this kit, and you'll be able to defend your country or whatever, and we just want out. Maybe. Maybe there's another side to the deal as well, because back in the day, Afghanistan was at one time the world's major supplier of heroin, I think it was, because they could grow poppies there in large quantities and make opium and heroin and whatnot, because those plants are a source of it. Now, when the Taliban came to power previously, they banned all that, and the drugs market was killed, effectively, in Afghanistan. Then the Americans went in and kicked the Taliban out, more or less, and the poppy growing began again. So it became a source of drugs again. Well, I know the government says just say no, but there are lots of stories about the CIA making money from drugs, so they can do their black ops off the books. They're probably true. So maybe, if the Taliban decide this time not to ban the drugs, not to ban poppy crops, so they can make some money, but maybe it's actually a part of the deal under the table. And as for this $85 billion worth of equipment, the American government is going to have to pay the military-industrial complex another $85 billion to get it replaced. So huge profits for somebody's friends, yeah, I think. Sure, they pulled out, they've ended the war, which all these companies lobby to not end the war, but still, they've got their reward. Massive profits to be made again, and probably there'll be another war somewhere else. It's just so peculiar. It doesn't seem honest to me, and now, so I'm looking around for reasons, and there are some. And of course, humanity's obsession with money and profit is behind climate change as well. I mean, full disclosure, I do think climate change is at least largely caused by human intervention. I mean, on the one hand, we're just trying to meet our needs. That's fair enough. But on the other hand, we are, and have historically done it under this civilization, really since even before the Roman times, by way of exploiting nature in very unintelligent, unsustainable ways. And, I mean, the companies that knew about the dangers of carbon dioxide pollution 30, 40 years ago, I mean, I knew about it. When I was in school, we were taught what carbon dioxide would do in the atmosphere. We were actually taught that it would lead to warming. So these companies with their scientific advisors, and Exxon, as we know, did know, they've chosen profit, let's get rich, rather than have an inhabitable planet. Because I'm alright, Jack, and the next generation can go to hell. If you believe in God, I suspect you think these people are going to go to hell instead. Seems to me like they probably should. Or at least be given a hard time, let's say. The IPCC report is out, and they've decided to be not circumspect with their words this time. They spelled it out. We're pretty much doomed. We are on the path of the worst case scenarios. And when we look at our near worthless politicians, that's not surprising. Can we stop it? I don't think so. I mean, we can partly mitigate it, and as disasters like Hurricane Ida, another 100-year, once in a 100-year hurricane hitting New Orleans and the area around it. They're more like 1 in 10 years now, aren't they? As we look at these disasters, eventually it will become too uncomfortable for the politicians, and they will have to do more than pay lip service. I mean, to some extent, the market is moving in that direction too. Solar power in the United States overtook coal power for the first time in 2020 as the generator of energy. Unfortunately, natural gas is much higher still, and it's kind of the same situation in Britain, and probably, I don't know about the rest of Europe, but it's probably similar. Our government in Britain has started introducing laws to switch from natural gas, that's methane, to hydrogen. Hydrogen is better because it burns producing basically water vapour. Water vapour is a powerful greenhouse gas, but it only stays in the atmosphere for at most a couple of weeks, so it's not such a big problem. Carbon dioxide can stay there for a century or more. Methane for, I think it's many months, maybe a couple of years. But very dangerous because it's so powerful as a greenhouse gas. I mean, we might have to try and use carbon requisition technologies which are unproven on the large scale. Nobody's doing it. No particular government has an incentive to do it. Because if you start requisitioning carbon, that just allows your rivals to carry on burning carbon. If we requisition carbon, half of it is going to be coming from China. Oh, and I would point out, just a reminder, what Greta Thunberg has told us, that when our government claimed that they've cut carbon output by 40% or whatever it is, they're lying. Because, of course, they're not counting the factories in China. They're not counting airlines and stuff like that. So, yeah. It's the same as the unemployment statistics. They just don't count things that don't suit them. Or the inflation statistics, where inflation is really low on all sorts of things that people don't need to buy. And as for these profitable or profit-first companies that don't care about the climate, they've kind of stopped the climate denial stuff because the disasters that are happening around the world are getting a little bit hard to ignore. And it's pretty obvious what's happening. Instead, they're going for carbon shaming. You flew to this conference. What's your carbon footprint? It's a stupid argument. Because we currently only really have one economic system. And we have to use our current system in order to change our current system. And the most efficient way to get your message out is what you have to do. It's kind of the way the companies themselves probably would justify their behaviour. If we go green, we will lose out to our carbon-hungry competitors. And that's true. It's up to governments to make a level playing field by implementing laws to stop over-usage of carbon. It can't really happen in a laissez-faire system where people are literally competing, and if they do the right thing, they lose out. It's a bit difficult, and this is why nothing much has happened, and also because the politicians are bought and paid for by the big companies that would be affected by most of these laws. At the moment, governments implement laws that really block small companies, competitors for their big friends. That was largely why I was against the EU and in favour of Brexit. I'll come on to Brexit in a minute, because it's also a mess. But the thing that I really didn't like was that the EU was corporate bought too. With our own government, we have a little bit more chance of kicking them up the backside occasionally. But the EU was beyond that. They didn't seem to. They had big plans for the long term, which were anti-liberty, but on the other hand, some of their rules were very good. Quality of products and things of this sort. It's always swings and roundabouts. One issue I have with carbon requisition is where do we put the carbon once we've got it? Because I'm not keen on the idea of them shoving it underground. It's a bit like fracking. You pump stuff underground and you're going to cause earthquakes. And who knows, you might even cause volcanoes for all we know. Depending on where you dump it. It's untested and potentially dangerous. We don't know. Let's take a chance, yeah. Brexit. What a mess. As well. Food shortages in Britain. McDonald's has stopped selling milkshakes. Nando's has closed 50 stores because they can't get enough chicken. Pigs are having to be slaughtered because they can't get to the slaughterhouse because of a shortage of drivers. Crops are rotting in the fields because there are not enough workers to pick them, and there are not enough drivers to take the picked crops to the markets. There's a shortage of some 60,000 drivers in the country. Because of Brexit, a lot of them who were foreign went home and can't get visas to come back and probably don't want to anyway. And tens of thousands of drivers were not trained because of the pandemic, the fairy dust, right? They were stuck at home instead. It's going to take years to replace this shortage. A lot of issues were expected. And personally, I mean, as I've said, I was in favour of Brexit. And I did expect issues. But I didn't really expect it this level of incompetence and outright neglect by the government. I mean, okay, they're Tories. Laissez-faire is their preferred method, i.e. do nothing and let the market sort it out. I think most people don't really believe in uncontrolled markets anymore. I certainly don't. They are good in some ways, but they do need to be arranged to produce the results that you want, and not just left. Of course, markets being left suits the huge companies that the government are paid for by. Their friends, their wealthy friends in corporations. Of course, a lot of them are wealthy themselves. Look at Rishi Sunak with his 12 homes. I mean, of course he always votes against welfare for other people. Isn't it strange? I mean, I expect issues to last for the medium term. In other words, 15 years. But I really did expect the government to actually be doing something about it. But they are, I think, deliberately letting it ride while they worry about the pandemic and stuff like that. Like, I think the shambles in Afghanistan must be, at least in part, deliberate, because surely they can't be that incompetent, can they? What do you think? Let me know in the comments. Are they incompetent, or is there really something going on? Is this just laissez-faire economics gone mad? Do they want us to see us return to Dickensian times where half the population is starving and living on the streets and consists of muggers and footpads? And the world is full of smoke and half the species are extinct. Really? Why is democracy failing? And it is. The politicians are not representing you and me anymore, if they ever did. They are blatantly supporting the economic powers behind events. it's a form of corruption. It is corruption if you put money before the general good. So these companies that decided to hide the science and obscure it and fight it, knowing that it was true, that's corruption, because they're putting their own profit before the good of the world. And politicians who support them are doing the same, and that is corruption. In America, of course, corruption is legal because companies can sponsor senators and congressmen and so on, and get their votes on issues accordingly. But in most of the world, that is not legal. But you can see there most clearly how it's working, because even though it's not legal, there are ways around it. You know, the business person can own some other smaller organisation which can make small donations. They can have loads of organisations which make small donations, and it all adds up. You can get around it, and they do. And the public doesn't help, because the public votes on the basis of charisma and not on the basis of competence or even honesty. I don't see... Well, we know Boris Johnson is a compulsive liar, and he's not really punished for it at all. He gets away with it all the time. Biden, I strongly suspect he's very dishonest, and he really doesn't care about the people in Afghanistan. That's been pretty clear watching his unconscious behaviour when people ask him questions about the refugees and whatnot. Right. He pretty much swears under his breath about it. He doesn't want to know. Let's talk about COVID. I don't want to talk about Afghanistan stuff. Afghanistan, right? What can we do? What is going on? Why is the pullout such a shambles? Is it deliberate? What for? Let me know in the comments. Bye for now.